it's freezing out there. I don't wanna. I really don't wanna. So how do you get yourself outside when it's freezing out there? Well, there's no trick to it. You've got to do whatever it takes to get yourself motivated. Read some technical articles, watch some motivational videos. Pick the smallest job that's outstanding on your car and just go out and do it. I guarantee it will snowball. So in a show of solidarity, I'm going to get as much work as I can done on Tina outside, weather permitting, over the coming episodes. We are going to make winter our bitch, and we are going to come out the other side in very good shape. It is great to be back. Here's Tina. You don't need to be Einstein to figure out where this is going. Now, I ran the car just for a few minutes to take the chill off the engine. I did not let it get to temperature because you don't want to be opening the pressurized coolant system on a car like this when it's hot, for obvious reasons. So the first things were the hose clips. Off came the top one, but I didn't pull the hose yet. The bottom one was a little worse for wear, so some wire brushing and a little bit of penetrating fluid, and off that came, and I drained the fluid. This has no coolant in it. This is just rusty water. Up top again, I could pull off the top hose, and I went about taking the rad off. There are 4 screws holding this thing in, and checking around that there was nothing else fouling, I released the overflow pipe from the overflow tank. Now the rad can come straight out. Carefully, of course. Now, we're going to back flush this rad, as in we're going to force water in so that the flow goes the opposite direction through the tank and any debris or old gunk will come out of the top. It's no harm to fill the rad up full of water as best you can and then give it a good shake just to dislodge anything that might be stuck in there. And I did this until the water coming out the other end was clean and clear. Back into the car with the rad, and I pulled the expansion tank just to give it a clean up as well. I used a bottle brush for this and a toothbrush and just got inside to get rid of all the accumulated dirt. There's a min and max level on this. I presume that this is just for a different use because this really is just an overflow tank. It is not really an expansion tank. Anything that goes into it is not coming back out unless you take it out yourself. Now, the Pinto engine has a drain plug on the block, which means that there's probably some more coolant trapped in here, and sure enough there was. I back flushed in here with the hose again a few times until the water ran clear. Some people would be very wary about pulling out these drain plugs. There should be some anti-seize or some sealant in the threads of this that would stop it from corroding too much and destroying your block. We were fine with this one. With the block and the rad flushed, we could start reconnecting everything. So I put the bottom hose back on, but before I did anything else, I went back to the heater because the manual says you should take off the inlet pipe from the heater and leave it at the joint level. And as you fill the radiator, you watch for the level to come up to the end of that pipe. At that point, you can reconnect it, and that should prevent airlocks happening in the heater matrix. The real indicator while you're filling that you don't have airlocks is to make sure the car has taken the specified amount of coolant. In this case, it's about 5 3/4 litres, and that much did go in. And I haven't pre-mixed here because the engine will mix this coolant and water together, but I am alternating between coolant and water as I fill it. So with that done, the cap goes on and we're done. Just some notes on this. It's a good idea to run the car a little bit, checking the level before you close everything up. And if you're draining coolant, do not drain it to an open drain. It is harmful to the environment, animals are attracted to it, and it is poisonous. Anyway, straight on to the Range Rover. Finally, time to get these nice panels I fabricated welded into the back of the car. This was going to involve a lot of to and fro with the panel just to make sure everything was in good shape and fitting snugly. I used the grinder to cut out the excess and rusted pieces from the floor, and with a few more test fittings, shaving as I went, this panel is almost ready to go in. Now you see here at the back of the panel, I've left a longer section. That is because the original section of the rear floor has a rolled edge on it. So we need to leave some in the new panel to be able to bend that down later on. So here we are looking down from above. And by the way, as this camera zooms in, I wasn't intending that to happen. My welding mask, which I already had on, kept on knocking off the lens. I thought it wasn't making any difference, but I had never considered it could be actually turning the zoom ring on the lens. Just over to the vise to make a few last little adjustments. That roll lip, I needed to make a small cut in this just to be able to bend that and roll it over. Here we are. And then zip that little excess piece off. With it gone, it was time to drill a few pilot holes here to get plug welds into. Over to the drill press, and I let 5 holes into the panel so I could get decent plug welds into this and onto the rear cross member. I marked those holes on the rear cross member and sanded away the paint so we had bare metal with the power file. But the first tack I put into it, unfortunately things moved. I hadn't clamped anything, I was kind of relying on gravity. It's hard to see here, but the boot floor is sitting just a bit low in relation to this new panel. So I ground that little tack weld off and welded up again. This time we're good. Okay, with the rest of the tacks in, I welded this through, and my God, it just feels such a shame now. I'm starting to really get tired of this welder. As much as I defended it in the past, some of the little things that it does, I mean, the spatter is one thing, I can deal with that, but the flux cord wire, it generates gas obviously as you're welding, but the gas, because of the nature of the wire, is trapped within the weld, and at the last minute it tends to pop out and kind of blow a hole in the weld, and you can see this effect that it has on the welds. I'm sure there is a way around this, but because of the way I have to shoot, taking a frame between each bit of welding, I have a feeling that's affecting things too. Anyway, as before, there's still decent penetration and the welds are strong. This looked a damn sight prettier before I welded it, but hey, needs must, and this is the way it is. I could grind all this back, but I really don't see the point, and I'd rather leave whatever strength is in it. So over to the offside, same deal, in and out a few times, check the fit all the way along, cut out the pieces of steel from the floor that aren't needed so we get to good metal, mark the plug weld spots on the rear chassis cross member, and then start to weld it in. The welds actually went better on this one. But again, this isn't looking great, but I found there's a great trick when you've got bad welds like this. If you step back far enough and then squint, it looks better. See what I mean? You just do the little jobs and the bigger ones follow. Anyway, some shout outs. There are 2 Esprits in this section, which is just really cool. The first was sent to me by Matthias in Germany. He has a Series 2 Esprit. He's also a professional video editor, so I have a lot in common with Matthias, and we've been talking, and when I complete my car in silver, I think it will look very cool alongside his. Alright, the next one is Dan and Bo Elphick, and they've got this stunning black turbo Esprit. I think this is just a really gorgeous car. I think it's pretty well known on the scene too, and I see a Lotus Forum sticker in the rear quarter window there, so good man lads, keep it up, and thanks for sending me the photo. Nick Lumidis in Athens has a classic Mini that he's restoring and a Mercury Monterey. That is something I had to look up. I want to go and see this thing. I feel a visit coming on, and I am planning a trip back to get some more work done on the bus, so stay tuned for that. And Nick, I'll see you soon. But the person I want to give the kit to is Colin Hagan. Colin's been around for a long time now as a patron, and I've mentioned him before, but he sent me these photographs. He really is getting stuck in, and that's what this is all about. So I'm sending Colin the kit. Colin, your welds make me very jealous. Thanks for sending in the photos, and keep up the good work, pal. Okay, it is time to finish things up with Bill. We're going to get the second half of the little chat I had with him, and we're going to finish up this really cool fiberglass repair. So here it is. Well, remember Bill came to look at the Esprit. My main concern was to ask him, was I going to be able to make this body perfect? Will I be able to disappear the hole in the rear floor well enough that no one would know it was ever there? Here's his answer.
Yes, definitely, yeah. I could. I don't know if you could. I could. In this case, you probably wouldn't need to, because it's not really where you scarf it in. You can round the outer join, if you know what I mean. Ideally, I tend to round every corner, but when you're restricted for space, you have to make compromises. I mean, it's the fact that the hole's there and it's not an issue already. You're just basically filling it. It's not a structural thing. Yeah, we found a repair there, and I think it was done quite well actually, because on the outside you can't see the joint at all. You can see where it's been grafted in on the inside, and there's a few areas that were could have been done a bit better, but overall I think it was a very good repair. Yeah, I was quite surprised how thick it was in areas as well. In fact, at times it seemed over-engineered in certain corners, but certainly fit for purpose, yeah. If it's been in water for a long time, it can have what they call osmosis, which is basically an ingress of moisture in through the ends of the strands, and that can, but it depends on how well it was first laid up, and the quality of the fiberglass. But I think recently I heard that they uncovered a boat that had been in a canal for 25, 30 years. So the fiberglass was 30 plus year old, and the engineers inspected the hull, and it was essentially sound. So it's actually quite a bulletproof material, you know, if laid up properly.
So you mean it had been submerged?
It'd be underwater for 20 years, yeah. The resins have come on leaps and bounds. I mean, there's probably about 4 or 5 different types of resins, but the main ones most people would know would be epoxy resin and polyester resin. Polyester resin still widely used in the marine industry. A lot of boats, most boats you see are made from polyester, but now the likes of the top end, America's Cup, that's all epoxy. Probably about 4 to 5 times the price of polyester, but again about 4 times stronger for the same given weight. And it also works better with different materials like carbon fibre and Kevlars and Dyneemas, that type of thing. So it's one of these games that's constantly evolving. I mean, everything's going composites these days. I mean, aerospace, aeroplane wings are now composite, aeroplane fuselages are now composite. A lot of car manufacturers are now going composite. I think BMW is now doing the bonnets in composite. There's because you get the benefits of the lighter weight, which means less fuel, it's more economical, it's more efficient, and they don't rust also. So. It's a lot of people get confused and I think carbon fibre is the ultimate, and it probably is when it comes to lightweight and stiffness. But there's nothing wrong with glass fibre. It's probably the best all-rounder. So it has good stiffness, very reasonable cost, and it's probably the best compromise. Carbon fibre is used when the ultimate lightweight is the goal, like Formula One, and then using epoxy resins as well. But you're talking, I mean, double, triple the cost of even just the purchase of materials. And sometimes people think, carbon fiber's got to be stronger than glass. Well, it is and it isn't. If you put the same layer of glass and the same layer of carbon fiber together, carbon would be stiffer in certain directions, depending on the direction of the weave, but it also shatter a lot quicker than glass. Glass wouldn't be just stiff, but they have different characteristics, Not really. It's more the cost of the material. I mean, average you could spend €50 on a square metre of carbon fibre, whereas you could get a piece of glass fibre with the same thickness for €3 to €5. Epoxy will bond to anything pretty much. Epoxy is has very good adhesion. It's sticky, whereas polyester, you couldn't stick polyester to epoxy really. It kind of repels it. Yet you can bond epoxy to polyester. Epoxy is a good adhesive, so it's great for bonding and laminating, whereas polyester resin is really only a laminating resin, which means for wetting out the fibres. That's why you see a lot of repairs that come into me and we end up just ripping them out, and they come out quite easily because they've used polyester to bond this to that, and polyester isn't really a good adhesive. You can mix it with certain fillers and powders that help, but for adhesion, you really want good epoxy or just methacrylate.
What's methacrylate?
Again, a two-part component. Two-part bond, not sure. Don't know.
What's it good for?
Bonding composites. So it's good for bonding dissimilar materials. I mean, you can bond metals to glass fibre, to carbon fibre to glass fibre. It's a good all-round adhesion.
So normal glass fibre doesn't bond so well to metal?
No, it doesn't. No composites really like bonding to smooth surfaces. So say if you were to try and stick a piece of glass fibre to a glass window, it wouldn't stick because it's so hard and smooth the surface. But that applies with most composites. It's so that's why the importance of giving any area a good key, a good roughing up, so it can get its teeth into it and grip. No, I like to use original materials. If it's a metal car, I like to use metal, and if it's glass fibre, I like to use glass fibre. And I wouldn't like to put. I also like to use original resins. So if it's originally a polyester resin-based boat, whatever, I'd like to use original because they tend to flex and work differently together. And yeah, I always like to use original materials. When it comes to glass, carbon fibre, there's also all variations and mixes and blends. So whereas Kevlar might be very good at abrasion resistance, say for underneath the kayak or whatever, or at the corner of a car or whatever, it wouldn't have the same stiffness as Kevlar, as carbon fibre. And it also, you can't sand it. So there's certain properties that this go for. So they tend to blend together. Now, the popular one in the next of windsurf board decks, they use a 50-50 blend of carbon and Kevlar woven together in a twill pattern. And that gives a good combination of stiffness, strength and abrasion resistance. So, but you can bond if there's different. Everything's bonded with everything else, or mated with everything else these days. They're developing it now, but most of the epoxies, and a lot of them still do, even the famous West system, doesn't really have very good UV stability. So if left outside exposed, the UV light will break it down. Yeah. That's why you'll see most epoxy-based or finished boats, cars, bikes, boards are painted. That's basically to protect it from the UV light. I'd love to build another kit car. Yeah, and I'd like to do another Cobra. I just like the. I think the styling, the body shape is. Yeah, it's timeless, you know. And but I'd like to do it properly. I'd like to put a V8 in it, do it properly. Yeah, the quality of the kits now they're so much better. I mean, I remember doing ours. We had to. I mean, there were no inner wings. We had to make our own. You know, use aluminium bits and bits of foam. And so now there was. But nowadays anybody can put them together now. It's great. And now they're really working on the handling of them better as well. They've these are better suspension parts. And that was how I ended up crashing the Cobra. It was where they used the original link arms from the Cortina, the real trailer link arms, and they had a notorious problem with the bushes. Used to wear and pop out. That's exactly what happened to mine. Came around the corner, bushes popped out, and wrapped it around a tree, basically.
Well, I'm pretty sure that Bill is talking about the void bushes on the rear axle of the Cortina. And wouldn't you know it, Tinas are rattling like hell, and if I can, I'll get to do them. Now, let's recap where we'd gotten to back at Bill's place. We had drilled a hole in a test piece of fiberglass. We'd marked out an appropriate scarf joint at 12:1 around the hole. We'd sanded it back. We'd teased out 3 layers of chop strand mat to fill this hole. We'd put a backing plate behind the hole so that we could start using resin on it. We had cleaned the surface of the test piece with acetone, weighed out our chop strand mat so that we could establish how much resin to make up, and we were just getting to the point where we were measuring out our resin. So let's pick up where we left off. Now this is just uncatalyzed resin.
Now the general rule of thumb is 2% catalyst. Yeah. For this polyester resin, I use 2%. So I've actually measured out 45 there. Let's take a bit out.
You can tell me what 2% is. Your phone can do this.
Right, so we've got 42 grams times 0.02. So it's 0.84 of a milligram.
Of a milligram?
Yeah.
A milliliter?
No,
yeah, milligram.
Milligram, I'm not sure actually. Now that's 1 there, so we're going to use just under that, just under 1. And that's all it is, and that's plenty to catalyse it. And you mix it up fully.
I should be doing the donkey work on that, shouldn't I?
Aye. Okay, that's enough, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you. Now,
I'll stick this to your forehead.
Before you wet the glass out, always put resin on the part.
Okay.
So just gonna basically paint it on. No special technique to this. I think you can paint a bit on the.
All the way through.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
That's right. We're not going to use. You could, if you really wanted. If you're going to use the gel coat, you could actually put a bit of white gel coat in there, afterwards. I've done this on a sample, I'll show you later. But for this way, we're going for strength. And so we'll start with the biggest layer first.
Yeah. Right, so now we've got the first layer on.
Okay, we're just going to wet this out. Now, resin will bleed through from the underneath where we painted it.
As well, yeah, okay.
And basically, use one layer at a time. And this.
Now, I was in the bilges of a catamaran doing this, using matting like this, doing a repair, a structural repair, and when it was inspected afterwards by the skipper, he said it wasn't bad, but then he looked again and said there was a lot of air bubbles in it. How do I avoid that?
Air bubbles.
Maybe did I mix it too vigorously or something like that?
Possibly. Stippling is the standard method, just for.
That just gets into all the fibres.
Yeah, and what you can do in the end, if you're using not so much a small repair like this, but if you're using larger repair, you can use a consolidator, and that helps consolidate all the different plies together, and that will get the air bubbles out.
It's like a roller with it's like an aluminium grooved roller,
and that will help get the bubbles out. Now you can see this getting wet now, and what happens is there's a binder in this, and the resin breaks down the binder, so it becomes more pliable, and you can start moving it around a bit. So that's takes about 30 seconds.
There's actually a reaction going on in there.
Oh yeah, not just the resin. It's breaking down the binder, and it becomes more. You'll see it in a while now. After about 30 seconds to a minute, it'll you can move it around where you like. So we'll just continue wetting out. That's the second biggest layer.
Okay.
It's be interesting to see how we got the right amount of resin.
Presumably if you get it right though, even if you put too much on the first layer, it'll all come up if you keep on working it.
You can put too much on. Now, the thing is with if you use too much resin, it's no extra benefit. It's just extra weight. Yeah. So you want to use the right amount for the glass that you're using, because you see how easy resin on its own. You're not really getting that much extra strength. Yeah. Unless it's. But then again, once the fiberglass is fully wet out, that's the optimum amount. There's the last layer.
You were able to pull some matting off the Esprit in underneath the headlamp pod. That wasn't because it was badly prepped, that was because it wasn't wet out enough.
No, badly prepped, I would say.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. Which means basically it wasn't sanded like this one. It wasn't sanded properly. It wasn't scarf jointed. It wasn't square corner, square edges. You see, if you.
But it didn't seem to be at an area that was a key. It was the kind of edge of a repair, and they'd come across into an area they didn't necessarily need to scarf out to. Maybe was it, or was it?
This is the ideal way to do it. Now you'll see the difference when this is complete. Now that's the fiberglass wet out, and you can see we've pretty much used the exact amount of resin.
Yeah.
Just because it was calculated out. There's maybe a bit left there, but so you can work out pretty accurately how much resin. See, there's no waste there at all. Right. Again, after
now I can see where the hole is and it's scarfed. There's a bit of a dip there, but it's not. That's a dip there.
It's not perfectly level.
This is taller because it's got extra material on top of it.
Yeah, but it's way better than a lump sticking up like that.
Oh, absolutely.
So you can see the difference now. He's sort of.
But later, when that's all hardened, gone off, do you sand it back?
If it's on the inside, depends how important it is. You know?
But you can.
Oh yeah,
and
you can perfectly flat
within that
because you've got the right amount of layers in the hole, in the groove. You know.
Awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. Now.
Awesome. You have another trick.
Yeah. Now this isn't essential, but it's useful. I use it quite a lot. It's called peel ply.
Okay.
It
looks like a very fine piece of that.
It is. Yeah, but this doesn't stick to resin, but it will absorb any excess resin.
So this isn't fiberglass.
No. Okay. This is a sacrificial layer that will be ripped off afterwards.
Okay. Why?
Now it's for two reasons. It's going to give a better, smoother finish. Also, you see some resins when they cure, they're left with a kind of a waxy finish on it, which it's very difficult to bond to afterwards.
Okay.
It gets rid of that, but it also, you can see it absorbing now the resin. It'll take off any excess resin, and it gives a nice smoother finish, and it helps blend in the repair better. So it's called peel ply.
And it's got red stripes in it.
Yeah, that's just for so you know it's there. Yeah, because sometimes it goes quite clear. It goes like a fiberglass. I suppose it helps remind you that it's on.
It is disappearing there, apart from the red.
Yeah. Yeah, and you wouldn't see it other than that.
Right, so that's all wetted out.
That's all wet out.
So
yeah.
What are you going to do next?
I just left the corner there so you can peel it off. Okay. So I'm going to put this in the oven just to speed cure it, and I'll show you one that we've Right, prepared earlier.
So this is one you did earlier.
One we prepared earlier. Now,
Before 300 grams.
I weighed it before to see how heavy it's going to be for the repair. See, ideally, when you do repair, you want to keep the same weight.
Oh, it is actually 300. It's not
It
from
won't-
before. It's before you put this.
Before the repair, it
Yeah.
weighed 300 grams. So
Okay.
it'll be interesting to weigh it afterwards to see how much it weighs now.
Awesome.
Ideally, you don't want to be too heavy after. Right, maybe a bit. But you can peel it off if you like. No,
That wasn't difficult.
no, it's made to come off now. That's all excess resin
Yeah.
that you don't need.
Yeah.
It's also left a nice, smoother finish that you can bond to instantly if you need to bond anything else to it. So that's how
That's
it's
incredible. I mean, it's not completely smooth, but then you could
You
easily
can, you can
make
sand
it
it back.
smooth if you
Oh,
wanted
yeah.
to. Yeah.
You see, if it's behind, it doesn't matter. You can actually build it stronger.
Yeah.
Once it's spread out and there's no hard edges, so that's fine.
But that alone is a better. I mean, the finish in the rear of
You
the
can't see
Esprit
you can't see the
is-
transition between
Yeah.
the repair.
No, not at all. But the finish on the Esprit is like this chopped strand finish. It's not as good as this. So.
Yeah, peel plate. It's good. It's a great set. I use it on most repairs. And now we also on this one, what I did was I painted a bit of gel coat on the hull first, a bit of white gel coat, just in case you want to use the.
The
case you wanna-
outside, yeah.
Yeah, it depends if it's going to be a
So
painted
this,
finish.
So this should look
Well,
relatively.
the colour should be fine. Now we'll need a finishing. It will need a bit of sanding and then buffing and polishing. But you can see straight away it's actually
It's not bad.
it's not bad. Yeah,
It's.
yeah. There's going to be an edge on
Why
it
did you do that? Why did you put the tape down first?
just to stop it spreading all over I mean, just to limit the
Amount that would leak.
yeah.
But okay, because if you had that just flat down,
You
on
can
the
spread all
plastic,
over.
it
You
would
can
still
sand
spread
it.
through.
Just saves work.
It weeps, does it? It kind of bleeds, does it?
It can do. Yeah. It also gives you a defined area to sand. And we can sand this off. We'll sand this off now and polish it in.
That's a lovely smooth finish, though. We won't be able to get that finish.
Yeah,
will we?
sure. Yeah. Okay, so sanding. I'd sand it with 240 grit,
Okay.
400 grit, 800 grit, and then you should be able to polish it straight in. And that should look fairly good.
Yeah.
We'll see.
And you want to do that now?
Yep.
Let's do it. Back in the sanding bay, and as I mentioned in episode 16, Bill had intentionally used a piece of polythene on the backing of one of the other test pieces for the gel coat so that he could get the ripple effect that does happen with polythene. When he sanded through, sure enough, he managed to get all the way through part of the gel coat to expose the resin underneath, and you can see it here. He also said that he managed to squeeze way too much cutting compound or polish out onto this piece here, so ignore this amount and him dragging his fingers through it. All in all, this is still a fantastic repair. It really is silky smooth to the touch. And it's almost a pity that you can see the resin through it because you certainly can't feel it. Now, we did weigh the piece at the very end. You remember it was 300 grams to start with, and it came in at 315. And I gotta say, 15 grams in anyone's books is not a lot given how slick this repair is. So the last thing we're gonna do is we're gonna test the repair that we made by my favorite part, hitting it again. Okay, so I have to try and hit this dead
Okay,
on.
we try to use it from the back. Let's give it a good.
From the front, okay. All right, look away, Bill.
Whoa!
Yeah. I mean,
There's a bit of
you
a
can
crack
see
in the
it
gel
in
coat, but
yeah,
it's not cured fully yet. This is only done an hour ago.
Awesome.
Yeah, awesome possum.
Awesome. With just that little bit of composite knowledge and some basic supplies in the garage, the world of what you can do, what you can fix and make, it really comes into focus. So I hope you enjoyed that. All right, it's time for my patrons: Dan Elphick, David Hunter, Hugh Miles, Richard Hughes, Matthias, Sean Dubrea, and a special shout out for Dan Moore, who's a patron whose wallet got stolen. And you know, it's very easy to get disillusioned or feel a bit mean when sometimes that happens to you, but he, in a very positive way, made sure that his patronage didn't even skip a beat. So Dan, thanks a million, mate. I love the positivity, and thank you all. All right, that is it for episode 17, and I know what we're going to be tackling in episode 18 because Tina is not a happy bunny. Oh no. Come on, baby.